Present him to you. He's somebody we know very well, and he has been in the IT industry for a very long time. We've read most of his articles. He is currently the president of the Ghana Technology University College. He is a recipient of a number of prestigious academic honors, such as the Mary Malloyd Award from the Black Honors and Award Committee for Leadership. He holds a postgraduate and a doctorate degree in social policy from Norway and United States, respectively. Please help me welcome Professor Osei K. Dakwa. He will be the moderator for this section. I would also like to introduce to you someone who is the current government statistician, or he's the acting statistician, I'm told. He has gone through training and hands-on applications. He has gained substantial experience and needed skills encompassing all aspects of statistics, and has better understanding of theoretical imperatives. He is in the person of Mr. Ba Wadia. Please, you're welcome. Also is Mrs. Kwete Fakono. She is currently the Executive Director of the Data Protection Commission. He has worked consistently on research and policy issues affecting information technology and telecommunications law in Ghana. Between 2008 and 2014, she worked as an ICT legal expert at the Ministry of Communications under the e-Ghana project. He has combined enormously and contributed to the development of the ICT industry. Madam, you're welcome. These are our panelists who would be giving us presentations. And as I indicated earlier on, Professor Osei Dakwa would be the moderator for this section. I will hand over to, and then he will spell out the rules of engagement for the program. But before I do that, I would like also to present to you Professor Felix Ankuma Asante. He is the current director of Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research, University of Ghana, Legon, where he has been for the past 21 years. He has conducted research and also published extensively on critical economic and development issues. So he's well versed in the topics or topic that we are going to be discussing. Prof, thank you very much. Before I hand over to the moderator, I would like to also present to you some management members of the NCA. We have our Deputy Director in charge of operations, Mr. Prince Sefa. We have in our midst also our Director in charge of legal, Madam Abena Asafweje. She's here with us. We have the Director for Consumer and Corporate Affairs, and she is in the person of Madam Nana Defi Badu. If there are others later, I would introduce them to you. But for now,
Honorable Deputy Minister for Communications, our board chair for NCA, representative from the UN, and representatives from other organizations, such as the Ministry of Communications, the ITU, and others. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, you're all welcome to Section 2 of World Telecommunications Day. As you know, the theme for today is Big Data, Big Impact. The act of gathering and storing large amounts of data for analysis is ages old. This is not new. The amount of data that is being created and stored on a global level is almost inconceivable, and it just keeps growing. Data is being generated by everything around us at all times. Today, the term big data has emerged to describe the large volume of data that inundates us on a day-to-day basis. This concept was made popular in the early 2000s by industry analyst Lenny when he articulated the now mainstream definition of big data as the 3 V's: the stream volume of data, the wide variety of data types, and the velocity at which the data must be processed. Others have added additional dimensions such as variability and complexity. With the emergence of what has now come to be known as the Internet of Things, a concept that refers to a network of physical devices, vehicles, buildings, and other items embedded with electronics, sensors, and network connectivity that enable these objects to collect and exchange data. Data acquisition, storage, and use has taken on a new dimension. Today, data is fueling product innovation and generating new revenue opportunities for many organizations. No wonder our board chair for NCA said, big data is now the new oil. The question before us this morning is, how do we use data as a tool for development? To help us answer this question, we have 3 seasoned presenters who have already been introduced. So I'm going to outline the rules of engagement. Our first presenter, Professor Felix Asante, is the director of the Institute of Statistical, Social, and Economic Research. His topic is, what does big data, big impact mean? He will speak for 15 minutes on this topic, and then he'll be followed by Mr. Ba Wadia, the acting government statistician. His topic, the power of big data for development, big data for big impact. He also speaks for 15 minutes, and then he'll be followed by our final presenter, Mrs. Tiki Akwete Falconer, who is the Executive Director, Data Protection Commission. Her topic is, do businesses and government know too much about consumers? How do you ensure that consumers and individuals' rights and information are protected? All the 3 presenters will speak. After the final presentation, the floor will be open for your questions, comments, and suggestions. So on this note, let me invite Professor Felix Asante, our first presenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me add my voice to thank NCA for inviting me Yesterday I was at the policy summit and I was saying that you really find academicians be involved in some of these things. So thank you very much for inviting me. My presentation is on what does big data, big impact means. The slides. Okay. Do I control it? Oh my gosh. Okay. The concept has been in use since the 1990s, but gained popularity in the 2000s. In the 1990s, the term was used to refer to the storage and analysis of large data collections. Since the 1990s, the media often automatically capture behaviors and conditions of people or places, and that provided new data sources for analysis. This rapid evolving landscape has led to the popular press as well as the academics to use the term big data to describe various data from various media such as those listed above, which includes the online shopping website capturing transaction data, retail computers capturing purchase data, internet-enabled devices capturing environmental data, mobile phones capturing location data, and social media capturing consumer sentiment. However, there appears to be no real and rigorous definition of big data, so it is often described in relative terms. Some people distinguish big data with respect to the largeness of the data set. Others, however, emphasize the value that comes with utilizing various kinds and sizes of data sets to make better decisions. The three V's that the chairman talked of provide a good description of what big data means. And the three V's are the volume, variety, and velocity. Sorry. The volume refers to the actual size of the data set, and here it's relative depending on who is managing the data. The variety refers to the various types of data sets that can be possibly merged to produce new insights. And the third, velocity, refers to the frequency with which the data is recorded and or analyzed for action. There are additional features of big data sets, and here we know of the variability that was mentioned by the chair, and then the complexity. The variability, in addition to increasing velocity and variety of data, data flows can be highly inconsistent with periodic peaks, and complexity deals with big data. Complexity comes from multiple sources, which makes it difficult to link, match, cleanse, and transform data across systems. Now is big data the same as open data or crowdsourced data? And you realize that there's an interface where the three meet. Open data refers to data which are technically and legally open, that is available to machine-readable format, and licensed to permit commercial and non-commercial utilization. Big data may be open data, but not necessarily the same as open data. Open data refers to the degree to which data is liquid and transferable. For crowdsourced data, it refers to data collected through the aggregation of the input from the large numbers of people. And crowdsourced data can also be big data, but need not be. Crowdsourced emphasizes the means through which data is collected, whilst big data emphasizes the depth and complexity of the data set. Certainly with every big data, there are challenges. And here, there are issues of capture, the storage of the data set, the analysis, data curation, the search for the data, sharing the data, transferring the data, visualization, updating, and the last among others, information privacy and data protection issues. So you can have the big data, but you might be constrained by one or more of this. And I'm sure in Ghana, will fall in a lot of this. The data can be there, we know it is there, but we cannot access it. For instance, the statistical service data is all on the website, but most people don't know how to access it. So that can also be a big barrier. And even when you access it, even the software to analyze it becomes a big problem. This shows the evolution, and I asked the question, are we overcoming these challenges? I cannot answer it. I'm sure when it comes to this discussion, we'll know whether we are overcoming this. But you notice that from 1986, when analog was the order of the day, you will notice that the analog storage is the green, and then the digital is the light brown, depending on how you see colors. You'll notice that after 2000, analog storage, it's going down, and digital storage has taken its place. And this has implication for the challenges I raised earlier. And we need policies and guidelines to manage this digital storage era. Because even though this is high technology, it can also serve as a disincentive. Increasing capacity to generate data. Accompanying the rise of the capacity to store and analyze data is the increasing capacity for people to contribute to and access it. It is estimated that as of 2013, 39% of the world population has access to internet. Globally, mobile phone subscriptions are almost 7 billion, and this approximately equals the number of people on the face of the earth. Regional discrepancies for mobile telephone subscription rates are not as pronounced as access to internet. Potential for the big data. The importance of big data does not resolve around how much data you have, but what you do with it. The use of big data over the past several years has been motivated largely by private interest. And this is very, very interesting. So the whole idea is being driven by the private sector. The marginal benefits of big data are, however, substantial for both private and public interest. The value of big data via improvements in customer intelligence, supply chain intelligence, performance improvement, fraud detection, as well as quality and risk management is very substantial. Businesses have benefited from big data in many ways, such as using consumer purchase data to make personalized recommendations, analyzing store and product level purchase together with climate data efficiently to maximize sales, minimize inventory costs. And lastly, among others, analyzing location data on trucks together with geographic data to minimize fuel use and delivery time. So this is telling that we can use data to plan our lives and to make our work very efficient. Examples of specific companies that have benefited from big data are the famous Microsoft and Google. Microsoft improved the accuracy of its grammar checker by increasing the relevant database from 1 million to 1 billion words. And Google utilized 1 trillion words more effectively to provide language translation services. The non-business also can make good use of big data to make big impact. Several governments have used big data in a variety of ways to streamline processes. In Sweden, for instance, the government uses previous year's data combined with user confirmation via text messaging to streamline tax filing. And in Ghana, if we're able to do this, we'll improve upon our revenue generation. Yesterday at the policy summit, one of the big problems that we are facing is blocking leakages in our revenue mobilization. I mean, it's so painful when you pay tax, but it doesn't get to where it should. And I think the use of big data is one way of doing that, so that we all don't rush to the internal revenue or GRS. In Germany, for instance, the Federal Labor Agency used its multiple dimensional historical customer data more effectively to assist unemployed workers, thereby reducing cost of approximately 15 billion US dollars annually. And lastly, in Guatemala, a pilot project explored how mobile phone movement patterns could be used to predict socioeconomic status, thereby approximating census use, which can often prohibitively expensive to produce. I cannot move without talking about what ISA we are doing in terms of this big data. I mean, getting the big data is one thing, but it has to be generated. And there are technologies and state-of-the-art ways. One aspect of big data analytics. And here we tried, or as an objective, to improve infrastructure and capacity for data management in Ghana. And the main purpose is to strengthen our capacity to provide services to various organizations within the sub-region. And here also to play a long-term role in policy research and related M&A function. So what we have, we've built, currently we use computer-assisted personal interviews to carry out all our surveys. And with this facility, currently we are doing surveys in Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso. So we have a server based in the institute, and which is hooked to a generator and solar panel. So there's no excuse for the data not to hit the system. It's very expensive to go such a system, but if you decide to do it, then you have to, because there's no excuse. A user coming to get his or her data, and you complain that there's doom so. Okay. So if the country want to go that approach, we need to invest and invest very well. I mean, it's not an issue of somebody working and it rains and the person gets to the office at 10 o'clock. No, there's no excuse for such services. And we are hoping to establish strong regional and international partnership and networks on data and impact evaluation. Our servers have been configured with VMware version 6, and that is a server. And we have a number of electronic machines, which are notebook, tablets, or laptops, remotely connected. Currently, we have about 200 laptops or tablets that are linked to our server. And irrespective of where you are in the world, once you collect your data and you submit, it has to hit the data center. Okay. We're able to handle more than about 10 large surveys within the sub-region simultaneously. And on this note, I'd like to thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you for that presentation. You are right on time. And that's good. All right. Before we invite our next presenter, I would like to acknowledge the following dignitaries who just joined us. Honorable Kennedy Ajapon, MP, Asinov. Then we have several organizations listed here. Diaspora Relations. I don't know if it's part of the introduction. Oh, they are representatives. Okay, could you just, okay. We have Meteorological Agency, representative. Okay, you're welcome. We have the Ghana Police. Okay, they're here. We have the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay, I've also been told that Honorable Kennedy Japan is also the chairman. I need to get the title right. So of the Select Committee on Communications, Parliamentary Select Committee. So, Honorable, you're welcome once again. Representatives from Senate. Okay, they're here. Bank of Ghana. Okay. Helios Towers. Okay. ATC Ghana. Okay. KPMG. All right. And then BNC. Okay. You're all welcome. Let me take this opportunity to invite our second speaker. We heard from our representative from ISA. Now we're going to hear from the acting government statistician. Earlier on, I mentioned the topic that he's going to present. So without wasting time, let me invite our next speaker. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, moderator. The Honorable Deputy Minister for Communications, the Board Chairman, National Communications Authority, Honorable Members of Parliament, Representative of the UN Resident Coordinator, Director General of the National Communications Authority, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am delighted to be with you today to celebrate the World Communication and Information Society Day. It is my particular pleasure to be speaking to you on the topic of big data for development. Giving the audience our focus specifically on the significant potential of mobile phone data to provide valuable information to inform development in Ghana. As you may be aware, in 2015, the nations of the world came together to agree on the Sustainable Development Goals, which will be referred to as the SDGs. This ambitious set of goals set out a lofty vision of a world that we all want to see and is underpinned by a commitment to leave no one behind. Much more inclusive than their predecessors like the MDGs, the SDGs are impressive in both breadth and depth and recognize the different realities and starting points for countries involved. Crucially, from a statistical point of view, the SDGs were also accompanied by a call for a data revolution, recognizing the significant technological advancement, various new sources of data, and innovations in the field of data analysis. The high-level panel advising on the SDGs route, their report that better data and statistics will help governments track progress and make sure their decisions are evidence-based. They also can strengthen accountability. This is not just about governments. International agencies, CSOs, and the private sector should be involved. A true data revolution will draw on existing and new sources of data to fully integrate statistics into decision-making promote open access to and use of data, and ensure increased support for statistical systems. Ladies and gentlemen, it is clear from this passage that a data revolution is not only important for government tracking and accountability, but requires multi-stakeholder approaches to truly unlock the potential of data to achieve development outcomes for all the citizens. This is a theme that I return to throughout this presentation, but it's worth underlining from the beginning. And I think that at Ghana Statistical Service, we are approaching the challenge of the SDGs in a multi-stakeholder way. We are keenly aware that we alone cannot produce data on the wide number of topics and insufficient detail that the SDGs require. Rather, we seek to nurture a data ecosystem made up of many different actors from the public and private sectors, development partners, civil society organizations, academia, the media, and citizens at large. These actors, moreover, will play numerous roles as data producers and users in building and enabling policy and legal environment, providing new capacity and pioneering technological and methodological innovations. This is our vision for a data ecosystem that can deliver for all Ghanaian citizens, and are keen to find new partnerships with private sector organizations in order to achieve it. Indeed, at a recent data forum aimed at charting a roadmap for sustainable development in the country, His Excellency, the Vice President of Ghana, remarked that at this crucial juncture, when the amount of data churned out on a daily basis is progressively increasing, with constantly evolving technologies for data collection, analysis, and communication, it becomes our shared responsibility to galvanize towards harnessing this revolution for the betterment of our citizens. Taking my view from the Vice President, I would like to spend the rest of the presentation outlining the ways in which particularly telecommunication agencies can engage in new data ecosystems and help harness the data revolution. The 17 goals, the 169 targets, and 230 indicators of the SDGs provide perhaps the best framework to think about data needs. There are three key challenges that we are confronted with. I mentioned earlier that the SDGs were more inclusive than the MDGs. This means that they cover more thematic areas that we have never collected data on before, opening up wide gaps in the field of environment or migration data, for example. Secondly, I also alluded to the promise to leave no one behind. You may notice that official statistics often give only national or regional averages and cannot tell us accurate information about many of our subpopulations. The SDGs insist that data is disaggregated by sex, location, socioeconomic status, disability status, and many other criteria besides. In a system that has arguably over-relied on censuses and surveys in the past, this presents a significant challenge. Finally, if data is to truly derive or drive development, it must be available on a much more timely basis to inform evidence-based decision-making. And so these are the three challenges we are reaching out to stakeholders in the data ecosystem, stakeholders like all of you, to help us solve. Now the questions are, how do we generate data on areas we have never studied before? And the next is, how do we collect information on groups and places that have been missed or obscured by our methods up to now? And thirdly, how do we How can we make all this information available in as close to real time as possible? Since the beginning of the presentation around the SDGs, it has been felt that big data may be part of the answer to help fill data gaps. As I am sure many of you are aware and has been mentioned, big data includes all data that is generated from daily life activities, including financial transactions, social media, satellites, and of course, telecommunications. The benefits of these data are undoubtedly many. There is little cost associated with collection. They are generated in real time and usually have relatively wide coverage. However, it is important to bear in mind that they have not been collected according to statistical methods and so cannot be said to be representative in many instances. Therefore, where big data finds its greatest application is in combination with traditional data sources. In this way, traditional sources such as surveys and census data could be used to validate findings from big data, and big data can be used to fill gaps in coverage, timeliness, and disaggregation of survey data. And so we should view big data and traditional data not as diametrically opposed to each other, but stronger when they are together. I would like to highlight now just a few examples, particularly of how telecoms information and those interested in being involved in data production for the SDGs can be engaged. This can be done by giving access to the data they collect, by providing connectivity to enable mobile data collection and transmission, and allowing use of their network for surveys and information dissemination. In the first instance, mobile phone data has shown to be particularly useful in tracking large-scale migration patterns. When combined with information on communicable diseases, for example, it can help to track the spread of health epidemics. And to reiterate what the Honorable Minister mentioned earlier, that in the wake of the Ebola crisis here in West Africa, for example, the GSMA realized the potential of their members' data to track the spread of the disease. They released guidelines to help to make this accessible. ECOWAS in turn endorsed these guidelines and are encouraging countries to explore this important data source. This type of data has been used to assess the impact of human mobility on the spread of malaria, for example. Similar data has been shown to be useful in tracking population displacement in response to disasters, socioeconomic analysis such as poverty metrics, producing dynamic population density maps, and other human behavioral patterns. Data on mobile phone credit expenditure can also be a useful proxy for food consumption and other spending patterns. As you may see from these examples, telecommunication companies are a major source of potential data that could be useful for harnessing information on development outcomes. At the Ghana Statistical Service, we are currently exploring opportunities to work with telecoms and world-leading companies in the field of mobile data analysis to fill some of our national data gaps. This is in line with the GSMA guidelines mentioned above and our national data protection guidelines. Ultimately, we aim to find innovative ways to collect information which will help our decision makers to tackle some of the pressing issues here in Ghana, but also to lead the way and pioneer new technologies which can be used in other countries. Apart from simply providing access to the data that already exists, telcos can also have an important role to play in supporting connectivity for mobile data collection and transmission. Like was mentioned by the director of ISA in statistical service, two examples that we currently going on in Ghana are the Ghana Living Standard Survey, which is presently in the field and using tablets to collect information, which is then instantly transferred using telecoms data to the head office. This eliminates the time lag between data collection and dissemination to stakeholders to use. Another exciting initiative that I would like to mention is the MBEV project, a collaboration of the BEVs and DEVs registry, TIGO, and UNICEF. Here, TIGO provided over 400 tablets to enable community volunteers to collect information on new BEVs, which enables BEV certificates to be issued for babies who would otherwise go unregistered. In fact, according to most recent UNICEF statistics, only 45% of BEVs in West Africa and Central Africa are registered, making it the region in the world with the lowest rate of BEV registration and far below the world average of 71%. This is a serious gap in our basic statistics, and MBEV has proven to be an effective way to begin to tackle this problem. However, further collaboration with other telecoms to complement TIGO's coverage is required to ensure that this program is brought to scale and can serve all Ghanaians. Accurate BEV certificates in turn ensure that each citizen knows his or her correct age, which allows for correct medical treatment when necessary. Moreover, with the current move towards national identification, BEV certificates will be crucial documents to help with the identification process early on in life. Mobile phones can also be key methods for reaching remote populations and gathering information through phone surveys and in disseminating information to individuals. For example, the Advanced project links farmers to markets, finances, inputs, equipment, and information through their mobile phones and has remarkable development outcomes. Ladies and gentlemen, these are just some initial examples of how telecom companies can aid in generating knowledge that can lead to concrete development outcomes for all Ghanaian citizens. Returning to the core of the high-level panel on the SDGs, as well as that of our own Vice President for multi-stakeholder approaches to achieving the SDGs, I would like to take this opportunity to ask for your collaboration with the Ghana Statistical Service in this endeavor. Together, we can ensure that telecoms data will help to achieve the Ghana that the world will help to achieve the Ghana and the world that we all want to see. I look forward to a future to work together with all of you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for the brilliant presentation. You're also right on time, so I don't have to. Well, let me invite our third and final presenter, Mrs. Falconer. She's going to speak on the topic, do businesses and government know too much about consumers? How do you ensure that consumers and individuals' rights and information are protected?
Okay.
You have the floor now.
Okay, thank you. When I was given this topic, I thought it was a trick question. And so in my attempt to answer it, what I sought to do was to give you a number of facts so that you can draw your own conclusions on whether government or businesses hold a lot of data. Okay, so do governments or businesses know too much? And this is just a little bit to give you, you know, an insight into what is happening in the space currently. Apart from our traditional ways of collecting information, we are well aware that a lot of us here are in the gaming space. We go online to play games with people. We're leaving some data trails. Who are those in this room with Fitbits on? A number of them are here. We have our Googlers who are always on Google looking for one thing or the other. Those of us on social media, checking into spaces, activating our location settings. We are all living one kind of digital print or the other. And can you see the gentleman in the middle, Snowden? Somehow he sought to say that for one reason or the other, some governments are collecting too much information than they have. Today, we are living our digital footprints everywhere. And this gives businesses valuable insight into our lifestyle, into what we intend to do, into where we intend to go, into what we enjoy doing, into how we want to be, how we want society to see us. They're able to also devise services that are very useful for our benefits. At the same time, there are genuine risks associated. I had the Honorable Minister speaking today about smart cities, and we are all excited about it. But there are real challenges that come from this space. And so I will go to the next question. If you look at the facts that are happening on the average, and these are US statistics, on the average person in the US has about 26, as of 2014, 26 applications on their smartphone. That is what is happening. It was very difficult to find statistics in Ghana, but it's estimated that in Africa, the average person with a smartphone has about 45 applications on their phone. Do we really know what all these applications are doing? Currently, this morning, I heard that our mobile subscriber penetration, mobile voice penetration is around 135%. Out of this, Ghana is ranked 33rd nation with 21% of its population holding smartphones. And imagine all of these smartphones equipped with about 45 applications. So that's a lot of data that we are generating on a daily basis. We have also been ranked as number 4 in the world when it comes to smartphone users. So clearly, we are really not behind when it comes to the amount of data that we are generating in this space. It's estimated that there will be 70% smartphone penetration in Africa by 2020. That means that we're a continent that is really ready for the digital revolution. But that also opens us up to a lot of challenges, which I will be coming to. Typically, what are we collecting on all of these platforms? We're collecting information on finances, on accounts. We're collecting information on business activities of people. We're collecting information on our clients. We're collecting information on criminal investigations. We're collecting information on details of criminal investigations and the like. We're collecting information on disciplinary issues. We're collecting information on elections and the like. We're collecting health information. We're collecting information on references, as well as sale and purchase related issues. We're also collecting very sensitive information such as DNA and fingerprints and the like to be able to take decisions. Now, how do I answer your question? How do we ensure consumers and individual rights are protected in this space? Typically, for me, I will say the answer is simple: comply with data protection laws. Okay? We have been noted, and I noted in a number of the presentation issues, data protection comes out quite a lot, more as a challenge than as an enabler. And I'm here today to tell us that data protection is more of an enabler than a challenge. Why do I say this? There are certain 8 principles under the laws that if we seek to comply with, we will have better quality information to use for the purposes of developing this country. We will have better trust from our consumers in order to be able to take good decisions and to build and grow our businesses. The first of these principles that I'd like to introduce to you is the principle of accountability. And that essentially says that to the extent that you're collecting any information about an individual, respect the fact that those individuals have rights. And in our country, they have what we call a fundamental human right, which is enshrined under Article 18.2 of the 1992 Constitution. This right gives them, the right to decide how their communication would be used and for what purpose. And the law says that any time you're going to collect or use individual information, recognize that the individual has certain rights and you must take steps to comply with it. The next thing you must make sure of is that your handling of the information is lawful. What does it mean to process information lawfully? So there are certain kinds of information that you can only process with the express consent of the individual. Okay, to my left-hand side, I'm seeing messages on unwanted messages, which is a nuisance to the individual. Do I not have a right to decide what kind of marketing material that I should receive on my phone? And what we should realize is that this information that we are collecting, if we give the individuals the opportunity, we'll be able to collect it in a credible way. And sometimes it creates challenges for them if they are not able to control, they are not able to stop, and yet they are bombarded with all kinds of information. Recently, the thing I've been suffering from is a number of groups that I'm on WhatsApp, and I realized I spend so much data every day because I'm bombarded with videos or adverts of things that people are selling. And you wonder, it's a nuisance, because what is really happening is that it's creating a challenge. You have to go into your phone or either get yourself off the platform. Meanwhile, it's a platform that has useful information which you require, but not that specific kinds of information, And so in order to make use of this platform, we must respect the people whose information has made this data the new oil. Anytime we are collecting and using information, we must make sure that there is a reason, and that's what the law asks us to do under data protection laws. Don't just go collecting information. Collect information for the reason for which you told me. So if I come to the hospital and you take my information in order to provide me with a particular medical service, that is the only reason. You should not go behind me to sell my information to a health insurance broker so that they can come back to me. You should not be able to use that information for any other purpose. And we're not saying under data protection, do not use the information. But all we're saying is that it is that individual's information. They have a right to it. They are entitled to it. It is that space, that privacy space, which gives you as an individual that right to act the way you want to. Without privacy, without freedom of, having that private space, human beings won't be able to develop. That is what we call a fundamental right. As a human being, you need that private space to think. You need that private space to grow. You need that private space to develop so that no one can judge you in your thought processes so that no one can abuse you in your thought processes, so that no one discriminates against you. And so this is a very fundamental right, which is very essential for all of us. And one thing that we drum on is that I've been told, oh, data protection is trying to stop technology from developing. But guess what? If we put data protection aside, and everybody does whatever they want with my information, sooner than later, we're going to get a collapse in the information space. What is going to happen? Because I know that there is no credibility in how you're going to handle my information, I'm not going to give you accurate information. So all the noise we're making about big data and its impact and how we're going to use it, we're going to get the same negative effect or statistics, and we're not going to go anywhere as a nation because I know that that information will not be protected. So what are we asking as Data Protection Commission of people? We're saying that, look, take time to really understand who you are dealing with, whose information you're handling, who are your customer base, who are those you're providing services for. How are you going to ensure that they know and they understand how you operate and how you're going to use their information? How are you going to be transparent and open enough for them to understand and then come back to you if they have any questions so as to enable you resolve their issues? And last but not the least, which is most important, data security safeguards. What are the tools that we are putting in place to protect that information? Just last week, we were hearing of the ransomware attacks. And what is really happening in this space? People are being, blackmailed to give money to return valuable information. And that is what typically happens when you do not put in adequate security safeguards. When the people around you are not well trained to understand how to handle the information. It's not so much about technology, because technology is as weak as the weakest link within your whole ecosystem as a business or as a government agency that is providing a service. The lady at the front desk, what other tasks does she have to do? If she's handling other records, is she handling it there? Will she leave her desk behind and move to another office whilst there's a visitor sitting there? Do you know who this visitor is? Do you know what they are trying to collect? Recently, after our conference, I had opportunity to interact with some of our speakers, and we visited a cafe just around the corner here. And when we were in the cafe, a gentleman walked in, sat close by, left their laptops open. After about 5 minutes, he went out. They didn't close the laptop. Automatically, it didn't shut off or sleep. So I could see whatever was happening, and I really got excited. So I told my friend, what can we do, And he said, okay, first I could zoom into his laptop and then take a picture of whatever he had. I realized he was a finance person working on some accounts. So I called the waiter, who wasn't trained to understand data protection in any way, and I asked, who's sitting there? I said, oh, that guy. He's the one that works on our accounts. Okay, so I have a lot of information without any effort whatsoever. The next thing that I did was they had a free Wi-Fi, which everyone could log on to. And my technology experts have told me, is the worst place to be. So I wanted them to demonstrate how this works. So we logged onto the Wi-Fi. He was able to pinpoint, we could see everybody who was there. Those who had names, you could even introduce yourself and get their names there because they had their names on their machines. We could also see banks, that have given machines to, and for some reason, their IP addresses have not been erased, so you could have access to that IP address. What is going to happen? Anybody who wants to collect any kind of information just in this small space is able to generate a lot of information about who is working in these institutions. They have IP addresses remotely, and I was informed that remotely they could just go in, get access in there, and use a bunch of, interesting software tools to break into these systems. And so the issues that we're talking about with data protection, I hope nobody is tuning off the Wi-Fi here. I'm not monitoring. With all of these systems that we are talking about, there are real risks. And it is interesting. Yes, we're living in that world, but that also comes, the criminals are also as excited as we are. And we must sit up and make sure that we are really respecting this space. And really, the value of this new data and the new oil is in personal data. Without personal data, we're not able to build the kind of value that we're going to build in our businesses, in our societies. We're not going to get the necessary developmental data in order to, make the right decisions as to whether a village needs a particular service or not. And so that's what I want to say, that the only way we can ensure that individuals' rights and their information is protected is by being aware of what the laws are requiring us to do. And data protection is not, and I repeat, it's not just a legal obligation. It's a tool, it's common sense, as I like to put it, and it's fundamentally a tool that can help anybody manage information that they collect better. You manage that information to build integrity and trust into your business. As government, you manage that information better to enable us take prudent decisions. And I can see time. Am I on time? Everyone was on time, so I think I'll end it here. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We've heard from our three presenters. Before I continue, let me recognize the presence of Mr. Kofi Capito, who is with the Consumer Protection Agency. Is he here? Okay, thank you. Very quick summary before I open the floor to you. We've heard from our three presenters. The first presented on data, big data, on the concept of big data. He talked about the 3 V's, volume, variety, and velocity. Compare big data to open data and crowdsourced data. Presented the challenges of big data and the potential of big data, and then give examples of how it's being used by his agency. Our second presenter talked about big data for development. Primary focus was on the 17 SDG goals, Sustainable Development Goals, and 169 targets. He presented some challenges and then posed a number of questions for us to consider. And then our final presenter focused more on consumer protection and data protection and its impact and how we need to be careful, with open data and Wi-Fi systems. So it's now your turn. We've heard from 3 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. So it's now your time. Your questions, comments, suggestions. If you have a question, you raise your hand, make it short, straight to the point. If you have comments, again, straight to the point. We have some people who have the microphone, they'll be going around. So you raise your hand and you will be acknowledged and recognized. On this note, the floor is open. It's your time now. There's somebody here. No? Oh, okay, there's also one mic, open mic there. Could you walk off?
Just a quick one for Mrs. Teki. One thing that I've always thought is quite interesting is the field of IT. I don't know if a lot of policymakers and leaders really have an idea how much IT, how much access, how much power the person that is in charge of your IT infrastructure has. Is Ghana ever going to consider, and this is not just a Ghana issue, by the way, some kind of bonding, some kind of licensing of people in the IT space? I get so worried. Everybody is an IT person. Thank you.
I think maybe we take 2 more questions before she comes. I also understand that the video guys want to capture. So, Honorable, if you wouldn't mind, there is a mic.
Okay, so my question also goes to Teki, and please excuse my ignorance. I was quite interested when you mentioned WhatsApp. So, if I'm invited to a WhatsApp group and I don't have any way to accept before I'm forced to join the group, is that not an abuse of my rights? Then secondly, anytime I'm on WhatsApp, it shows I'm online. Anybody that wants to reach me says that I saw you are online and I'm calling you and not picking up. So again, is that not an abuse of my rights? And please excuse my ignorance. I just want to be better informed. Thank you.
We'll take 1 more question.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe big data indeed is the new oil, yes. In the full-scale implementation of big data in Ghana, we believe that accepting change is rather the issue than financial investment. Okay, so I wish to know from Mrs. Teki what the Data Protection Commission is doing to actually plan to make Ghanaian citizens comfortably accept the benefits of big data as compared to in relation to the negative effects from ransomware and the others in other countries. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to ask you to respond to the 3 questions, but before you respond, let's recognize the presence of Mr. Eric Ofosu Nkansa, who is the manager of the Accra Digital Center. Okay, over to you now.
Okay, thank you. Normally, is it because data protection is exciting? I was hoping everybody else would have a question. Is Ghana going to consider bonding of some kind in the, you mean the IT space? I believe NITA, under the NITA Act and then the Electronic Transactions Act as well, there was some attempt under the law to look at IT standardization in the country. And so invariably with time, when NITA gets there, it should have enough powers. It has enough powers under to look at some kind of structure. Now, there's the issue of critical infrastructure. So that's one area where, for instance, who you determine should work in the critical infrastructure should have thorough background checks done and all of that. Aside from that, I do not think that this should necessarily be a legal issue, that is, if it's going to come from the government end, but it should be an industry initiative. So that it's developed as an industry practice to enable us get the right people in the right space. Being informed on WhatsApp, I think there's a privacy, maybe because I'm in that space, there's a privacy setting on WhatsApp that allows you not necessarily to be seen when you are online. Or even when you activate, you know that right now there are provisions that allow you to activate, what do you call it, no, not just the encryption, but to allow you not to be seen. So that if somebody is online, if you're online, it gives you the option not to be seen. It does.
It doesn't quite work in Ghana. What happens is that if you activate those settings, when you send or when somebody sends you a message and you read it, the person cannot see whether you read it or not. But once you go online and you are communicating, anybody who has your number, okay, sees that you are online.
We have communication with Facebook that owns WhatsApp, so we'll bring some of those issues up to see. Clearly, yeah, that's one way that I'm not comfortable at all because of that. In terms of group participation, that would be quite difficult. I think the only thing is to decide not to have the group or to have it, to join it or not. And usually what I have seen even on my own class platform is that the rules that we set amongst ourselves never works anyway. So it's a simple choice of, do you want to be there or do you not want to be there? The issue about WhatsApp, and a lot of people keep making these mistakes on their platforms. The fact that you're on a platform and information is shared and you end up disseminating the information will not absolve you of data protection issues. If, for instance, anything goes wrong and someone's information is shared wrongly and they decide that they are going to take and you can't, because once you have a course of action and in law, you can decide whoever you want. Usually you will look for the one that is well-to-do, who can really pay the damages. And so you run a risk, and I keep cautioning that on almost all the platforms that I'm on, but we are yet to see how that will play in our law courts. What is data protection to accept? Yes, so what we are doing in this space is clearly raising awareness is the most important thing to let people know. In terms of the big data space, we also recognize as a commission the importance of big data, especially for national development, and then also for the area that Mr. Bawadia raised on the attainment of these sustainable development goals. So we have resolved to work with all stakeholders to enable them ensure the integrity in the collection, to make sure that information is shared within the right platform and within the right space, to ensure that you know, there will be no violations to data protection. And that's the extent to which we are working within the big data space. Aside from seeing the importance of it, we also have a right to, you know, warn the public of the dangers so that they can be more responsible actors in the digital space.
All right, thank you. We are going to take the next round of questions. Please mention your name, agency that you are representing. Also, there is a key, a found key. So if it's yours, kindly provide evidence before we put it on the eBay. Okay. All right, we're good. Okay, I think there are people lined up behind the mic, so please, if you wouldn't mind. Our lady, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Deborah. I'm representing WASPAG. My question actually goes to Mr. Wadia. You would have to forgive me if I'm not well informed on the policy direction, but your presentation showed that you are in need of collaboration. You mentioned with the telecom industry. What I would want to know is, there are basically two ways of getting your information from where I stand. That is with policy direction and then the investment in the right infrastructure. What is government doing in terms of leading the way of information collection? Because you do not necessarily have to wait for the network operators or the telecom industry to give you that information. If policies have been made available for you to get it from them. So on that angle, I would want to know what the government is doing to get these information that you are in need of from the various stakeholders for you to make your assessments. That's that. Thank you.
We take additional questions.
Happy to consumer protection. I'm glad that my younger brother George asked that innocent question. Something happened to me last week, and is in line as to what he used. I had about 64 CDs on my mobile, no, the 64 as balance of my airtime. And then I realized the next minute it was down to 3 CDs. So I quickly went to the network and it was explained to me that, as a naive question, that the phone that I was using has already inbuilt some applications that takes money because it keeps going to that place and come back and going to. As the average user, I wasn't aware of that. Could somebody explain a little bit as to some of these things? I was surprised from 64 CDs to 3 CDs.
Okay, I'm Benedict Bentil. I work with Tigo. As a side note to everybody here in connection with what he just said, I think everybody, whilst using a new phone, always make sure you check everything, every prompt before you accept it. Sometimes the phone gives you a prompt, and then you accept something that is going to draw your data, and also deactivate automatically downloading media from WhatsApp. That should help conserve your data. So my comment goes to Mr. Wadie, and also to the Honorable Deputy Minister. I'm hoping that in your terms of office, we'll be able to digitize all the information sitting out there. There is data. You go to a hospital and they have cupboards and cupboards of paper data sitting there, which hasn't been digitized. So in the end, if you ask that you want all blood groups of a certain type in a certain location, you are unable to get that type of data because it's sitting on paper in the various hospitals. If we digitize this data and upload it to your service, you can then do the various searches that you want. And also, the various government agencies, rent control, whatnot, if every tenancy agreement was uploaded, digitized, it would be very easy to locate a particular person. If you have a police report, you can search in the records and find out this person lives in this particular location. Let's try to digitize all the paper records and then liaise with all the stakeholders. There's a reason you didn't have the data for Ghana when it came to the number of smartphone apps. The telcos actually do have that data. If you request it, or if there's a way where you are uploaded with that type of data on a regular basis, you should be able to have that data. So let's streamline all the stakeholders and digitize all the paper records. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. We'll take the next one.
Hello, hi. My name is Dr. Furubachen. I'm barely a week old in the country. I'm a professor at the United States Pasco Hernando State College. And when you talk of big data, we've heard a lot from here. But just as the man that's the one before me here, my question is like, if data is so good, why is it that when we ask for this data, we hardly get it? It took me 2.5 years to get data for just my dissertation, whilst I was still paying. So something I could have done and received my doctorate in 3 years. It took me 5 years. And all from the phone companies here. When I was just asking for straight down, they asked for a copy of their dissertation, which I humbly got on the plane. I said, you got a copy of it. Came down with it. And I can bet you it's probably sitting on somebody's desk collecting data right now as I speak. And so when we speak of data, yes, data is good. But data is only as good as it is organized in a meaningful manner. So that knowledge can be gained out of it. And then from it, we can learn wisdom. Other than that, it would be nothing but like a key soap with a dog. The dog ain't going to leave it alone, but will not leave it so that somebody who needs it will come and get it. So now my question also is to the panel here, is that anybody can chime on it. Please feel free. I'm only a week here and I'm going to be here long. And so feel free to get hold of me. But my point here is, when we talk of this big data, and I teach big data too. I'm an IT and also business organization management professor. So I'm talking from this experience, both in the industry and as well as also in the academia. But this big data that we talk of, the name scares people. So we need to bring it down. That is, we collecting information, organize it in such a way that at least, even if we want to know how many people need egg in Ghana, Based on our population, we know Kwame Dako somewhere can produce this amount of eggs for the population. And all we need is to get in front of the computer and key in field research and get that information. And then we give him the necessary funding to do that. So when we talk, we must talk the talk and walk the walk. And there's no free lunch in America, and so no free lunch in Ghana. If you accept something for free on your app, you might as well pay the consequences. Nothing comes, everything comes with a price. If you want the business versions of some of these applications, then you get all these securities associated with them. So then you can go to them and say, hey, why am I being charged X amount of dollars? But when you get something for free, your hands are tied behind you. And so it cuts both ways. And I think I have taken much of your time, and I will leave you alone. Thank you.
I think we'll wait for the panel to respond because we have about 4 questions. Some are contributions as well. So please just hold on, and I'll give them mic. Yeah.
Okay, so on the last comment and question, yes, you are very right. I recently met someone, and that happened to have been in the public space where they were doing some research. So they had collected the first set of data, and they wanted subsequent, they were supposed to collect a 10-year trend. So they had received like the first 5 years. And then the second 5 years of the report from the same source was different. So it was very difficult for them to draw appropriate inferences. And then, according to her, she had to abandon the project, about a year into her, and then start a totally new research altogether. So there's that challenge. From data protection, the way we are looking at this is how important administrative data is. And what we want to encourage is, especially, and we've had discussions with Mr. Bawadia on it, is how to even get, because we are required to ensure that even the public sector is collecting the right information and in the right space. And one of the ways by which you do that is to ensure that you know what you are collecting. Because that's the challenge. We don't have clear policies. When you go to any organization right now, it's going to be very difficult for them to tell you in detail what we're collecting, how detailed is it, where is it kept, who has access to it. It's very difficult, and that's what we're seeking to do. It's not going to happen overnight, and so I'm not going to lie to anybody, here. But it will take time. It is our hope that in the next couple of years, we'll begin to see, especially as we go into actual compliance with the law, we'll begin to see more prudent ways of collecting and organizing information, which can make it easier to just give information out, because you know what you're giving out, you know what goes in, and it's easier to share once information is properly managed. The challenge we have is that generally, and it cuts across, not just the public sector, including even the private, we're not organizing or managing our information in a prudent way to be able to make sense out of it.
For me, I share the concerns of the last speaker. I'm also in research, and I also find it very difficult getting data. But I think the answer is, as a country, best in data. We don't know the importance of data. I mean, you have data, nobody documents it, so you just go and you just ask for a little background why the data was collected. There's no information. So then I ask myself, how do we plan for the country? How do we come up with policies? So in effect, the policies and other things, it's not based on solid facts. It's just based on the ideology of the individual and what the person thinks it will drive the. We don't have data in this. We have it scattered. So I share your concern, but I think we need to find a way of investing in data, managing it, documenting it, archiving it. Is very, very key.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prof. Mine will focus mainly on the collaboration that I was seeking and the enabling acts that empower the statistical service to collect data. First, we by the laws that have set up the Ghana Statistical Service, we can enter any premise to collect information. But we all know that if we want to sustain data collection, we must do it through collaboration, so that we all agree on the importance of data, we all agree on the need to share data, we all agree on certain standards that the data that we collect should meet, and we all agree that it's always good to release data for development and for those who need it. In terms of the law, we have a current law. In fact, it is adequate, but it is even being retooled to help us collect more information. And that is what government is helping us to do. Apart from that, for most of our work, we are being funded through government and through government donor support. But more importantly, we realize that as a country and as an institution like Ghana Statistical Service, we can't do the data collection alone. We can't collect all the information that, say, the telcos have. We can't collect all the information that, say, the health service have. So that is why we're calling for that collaboration, that we come together. And in fact, for the SDGs, the amount of data, the length, the breadth, the disaggregation that is required, Statistical Service can't do it alone. That is why we are appealing to all those who have certain forms of data to actually work with us to ensure that we meet those standards and that we are able to meet the requirements of the SDGs and also the requirements for monitoring our own national development. Having said that, we recently had a data forum for Ghana to farm out the way to collect much of the data that are needed for the SDGs. And we came up with certain roadmaps, certain areas that we have to prioritize as a nation for data collection. We came up with certain groups or communities of data collection institutions, and we are reaching out to, we've in fact formed even advisory groups to see how we can move these data recommendations from the data roadmap forward. And most institutions here are part. Others we also be contacting to join us so that we can actually make good use of the little resources that we have in country. Then on digitization of data, we all agree that the way forward is to have digitized data. Most of the data you mentioned are in paper formats, they are on shelves. And what in a little way are doing is that, for example, for births and deaths, Statistical Service is assisting them to digitize much of the backlog of paper records that they have compiled, so that all the information with time could be machine readable and can be transmitted more easily. So these are some of the ways that we are trying to make the data available. But we need to work together as a community to ensure that the data that we need to monitor development are available. And Statistical Service, and we expect you to cooperate with us. Thank you.
I know there is one question about the phone billing, which has not been answered.
Okay, let me try and come in. I think that we should all recognize that a session like this is a very, very good start or a good thing that we are doing. The fact that you have the board chairman of the NCA here, you have representatives from the Ministry of Communications, and you have this highly empowered panel. Plus, a lot of you here that are investing your time into a session like this. We should recognize that as a government, we are supporting the process going forward. Welcome to the prof who came from America. You're welcome. You would get into the system. Your situation reminds me of my situation when I first entered politics, where I thought everything must be working like clockwork. But I think that you need to change that mentality. Don't look at what the other person has to do. Look at what you have to do to improve the system, and that's what helped me. So just a piece of of friendly advice. That said, we all recognize that we need data. But before we can start analyzing data or making good use of data, we need to make sure that the integrity of the data is solid. Okay, and that is what Mr. Bawadier was talking about. I'm sure you heard him say the number of sessions that have been had with different stakeholders. So we are moving bit by bit, and so we are heading in the right direction. And so I don't think that there's been any time in the industry where you've had the board chairman being a former CEO of the telecoms chamber. I don't think that there's been any time where you've had a substantive minister and a deputy minister coming from the operator side and now driving policy. So I think it's happy days as far as the industry is concerned. It can never ever get better than this. Okay, and so let us recognize the little efforts. I mean, not to talk about the NTA board chairman, I don't want to talk about his credentials, but you all know who your DG is and your deputy DG. You understand? So it's exciting times as far as the industry is concerned. So let us all work together and let us move forward together. There's really no point in complaining. There's hope ahead. Let's go together. On the issue of the Kofi Capito, the way that the consumers normally say is that the network is eating my money. I had that experience probably about a year and a half ago. I happened to have called Abad. Abad is the CIO of MTN, and he helped me out. That said, I believe, and I was just having a chat with my colleagues here, that the telcos need to do a bit more in terms of educating the customers, because I buy a phone. If the phone asks me, should I accept this? It doesn't tell me how much it's going to charge me. You understand? And then they'll start eating your credit. And there's a way around it. It's about killing those apps, turning off those apps. So with your permission, Mr. Moderator, I'd like to call on Abad to come and explain to us what we need to do to avoid getting ourselves into a situation like this. And I will charge all telcos that are here to make the extra effort to educate their customers to make sure that they get to such uncomfortable experiences like Kofi Capito went through. I mean, from 60 cities to what? It's bad. It's bad.
Thank you, George. Yeah, I should stand this way. Okay, so it's really apologies for the inconvenience caused for you, Mr. Capito, but yeah, so nothing personal. Just general information and nothing specific, because I'm not aware of your particular case, but the handsets that we are all holding today is a very powerful device that we all have. Okay, it can be used efficiently and it can be abused in many cases. So just to mention a couple of general cases that can cause the handsets to go outside control, and just to refer to as well to what the professor said, that anything free can really cause damage or will handcuff you. You will not be able to do anything with it. Because most of these applications that you are installing are for free, but for them to survive, they need to be able to collect as much information as they can of you so they can monetize it or blast you with the right adverts that is being paid for by the different corporates or by the different brands and so on. So nothing is for free. So my advice to you, just always be aware of the application that you are installing on your phone. Always be aware of the different settings, okay, that is activated on your phone, especially for privacy, especially for running videos when your Facebook is running, accepting to share location with a particular application. All of these are information that are passed through the data network. Just another simple example. Today, we are probably some of us are using the Google Maps. I use it a lot in Accra. And for Google to be able to estimate how much time it will take you from here to Ridge, just imagine what information they are collecting from the different Android devices on that street. They will be able to tell you almost very accurately that it will take you 11 minutes to reach Ridge. How they are able to do that? Just by monitoring a simple Android device that is in front of you by 10 minutes, or he just passed this route, how much time it took him to go through that road. And this is how they will be able to publish the information to the different Google users and so on. Apple has other different functionalities, which is iCloud. By default, iCloud is activated to upload. Any picture you will take will be uploaded to iCloud by default. So this is one of the huge data eaters, and we always advise our customers to make sure that they are aware of the settings of the iCloud on their phone. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the clarification and the information. And then we will continue with the question and answer session. So, give you the permission to ask your question. So please go ahead. And then we'll come to each other.
Okay. So my name is Theodore Albright. I work with Vodafone. Welcome to the brave new world of big data. But the corollary of big data is data security. Now comes my question. How ready are we as a nation to address the issue of data security? If we're going to mine the data, surely we must be ready to address the issue of the security.
Okay.
And this question is to the panel and to anybody else in this room who can answer the question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, let's move over there. Please go ahead.
My name is Apia Adumakon from CATS Ghana, a research and advocacy think tank. My first question is about how difficult it is to get data in this country. If you go to Ghana Statistical website, you cannot even find a data to download or to run a query to sort what you need. You just have to fill a form, and it takes some time, a month, to just get an inflation data spanning 30 years. I think some of this information can be put online for people to download. The next question is to the Executive Director for Data Protection Commission. I would like to find out, recently the European Union Court passed a ruling that allows users, you have a right to be forgotten. For example, if a tabloid newspaper writes something about me which are untrue, and the court makes a ruling, can I force that newspaper to delete every trace of a story relating to the publication that was made concerning me? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. We'll take additional questions, please.
Austin Hesse from the Ministry of Communications. Two quick questions for Madam Teki. The first one is, how do you balance the issue of protecting private information or private data from the use of aggregated data for development purposes, especially the ones used by the Ghana Statistical Service and other research bodies? Then the second one also goes like, how long is it legally permissible for an employer to keep an employee's personal information? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We take additional questions.
My name is Isaac. I'm with Biotech. We do sponsored data. Big data, of course, has actually caught up with all of us. The question is, how many companies over here have data scientists who would be able to mine the data that comes so that we can, make decisions out of it. How are our schools coming up with big data courses? Because now it means that you would need a big data architect, you would need a big data scientist, you would need so many different skill sets. How are our educational systems coming up with curriculums and courses that would help people, that would help us train our new set of skills, which would help in coming up with the insights and whatever we want to do with the big data fast? Thank you.
All right, thanks. We'll take the next.
Thank you. My name is Ken Edu Amanfo from the National Communication Authority. I want to add my voice to thank you all for that great presentation and the information that has been made available to us right now. There is a saying that knowledge is power and information. You have information is power. I believe all gathered here from your presentation and responses to our questions have enough information to empower us to actually deal with this big data. I'm sure you all agree with me that when we talk about big data, basically we're talking about the confidentiality, integrity, and then availability of the data, whether it's big or it's small. You agree with me that all this can be made possible with an IT infrastructure. Now the question is, how much investment are organizations, agencies actually putting into when it comes to their IT infrastructure? If you talk about the security of the data, there are different levels of controls that I can deploy to make sure that this information is secured. If you're talking about the, security is not, a wholesome, but at least I can implement different levels of control that will make sure that the information is secured. Talking about availability, you want it to be available, you need the systems in place to, but most often than not, you realize that organizations are not prepared to invest because IT is expensive in this to ensure that the data is available and it's secure and all that. So that's an area that I think organizations have to look out for. I'm a proponent of the fact that IT should be incorporated in the overall corporate governance, which most organizations don't do. They put IT at the backside and still want to have their information, want to have their data, their other systems running. There has also been an outcry in recent times on open freedom of information, freedom of data, availability to data. It has to be transparent. It has to be audited. Now, and this is coming from most often than not from the private sector, from the civil society, from the human rights advocates and all that. Now, how do we deal with them meeting the needs of making the information available to them and also ensure that it is secured? They want information to be available to them so that they can get it at any time. They also want it to be secured. Now, the more you implement controls and policies and guidelines, it limits the availability, having access to the information. The more controls you put in place, and the less controls also opens up for vulnerability and all that. So how do we bridge this gap? Satisfying the users in terms of making their data available to them and also making sure that it is secured. Thank you.
All right, thanks. We take the two final questions. Please, go ahead.
Okay, so my name is Francis Donko, and I'm with KPMG. I have a brief contribution. No doubt, big data is going to be a huge area. If it's not huge today, what that means is that organizations and businesses who are able to collect, process, and utilize data to their advantage are going to stay relevant in this modern market. We have so much data analytic tools in the market, but analyzing data is also a specialized area. You need people who are analytical and people who pay attention to detail and other things. That is why in KPMG we have actually focused. We have a department actually focused on data analytics, that we assist our clients, in analyzing data. So yes, big data is going to be a huge thing, and I think we need to invest in this area. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for your contribution. We'll take the last one before the panel respond to.
My name is Dedeli Kokudugbe, a student of the African University College of Communications, AUCC. My question has to border on the leak of sex tapes in our various schools and public domains. Oftentimes, over the years, we've had issues with sex tapes and nude pictures finding their ways into our public setting. I would like to find out, these are people, our next set of leaders who are taking over from where our leaders will be taken off. Should we continue to sit with arms folded, look at our future leaders, indulge themselves in such acts? I want to find out if there are measures put in place to discourage students from resending such informations from one page to the other. You will be there and a friend will send you, Kweku, have you seen the next link? They'll send it from your phone. This is the latest sex link. And then you just have to tap and then you get everything. I think that there should be measures to check this. And then after it's been leaked, it's surprising that you go on the net and you still find them. They have to be barred permanently from being assessed. And then my last one has to do with a contribution, a colleague's experience with those of us who use iPhones and just any other phone. Maybe you visit a friend and you want to charge your phone. You plug it to their laptop or anything, and then every information you have on your phone or your laptop gets into their device, especially with iPhones. For those of us who are not aware, I think we have to be aware of this. And then I would also like to find out if there are any softwares to prevent such things from happening. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for, I think we've taken enough questions and contributions. I'd like the panel to respond, and then we'll take the final round of questions. All right, so.
Yeah, I want to start with the questioner on the GSS website. I don't know the last time that he went there and what type of information he was looking for from the website. If most of you agree with me, the GSS website has over the years improved substantially. And currently, it's even being revamped so that it becomes more interactive. And there's a lot of information there that I don't know what he really wanted. But assuming he wanted inflation or some data that dated back 30 years ago. And perhaps that was the challenge. 30 years ago, some of the information may not have been digitized, and we're in the process of doing that. But I want to assure him that there's a lot of information. The areas he mentioned, inflation, we have a lot of information, time-based information on inflation on the website. And if he has difficulty in accessing the website, we have a full information and dissemination directorate. We have a data warehouse where he can come so that they help him even access the data. We have all that in place, and we're trying to make them more effective and accessible to the public. So please make use of the website, but if you have problems, let us know. We are prepared to assist you. Thank you.
Maybe looking at a training in big data. This is an area that is very, very dynamic, and I'll say we need the private sector to support the public institutions or learning institutions to have adequate training in big data. We are doing something, but because of the changing technology, okay, and the state-of-the-art use of some of this, we cannot match it. And that is where private sector is very, very, very key in supporting us. So we are doing something. The other thing is data security, how ready are we? I think we are ready as long as you are prepared to obey the rules. Okay. I mean, every data that is available, there are rules of accessing, using it. And if you don't want to go by it, then it'd be a big problem. If you are ready, I can assure you, in terms of security, you are safe. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'll take it from the issue about rules of use of data. Recently, I was sitting on the panel at the UN headquarters that had a group of humanitarian organizations that are looking to collecting information, and it had researchers from various backgrounds. One thing that was very clear in that space is that you cannot just get up and then collect any information without necessary controls. Yes, and it's very important to ensure the integrity of the information. Is also very important for the person who is also sharing the information to be able to trust that sharing this information with you is not going to end up in the wrong hands. So yes, the controls must be there to assure the integrity of even the information. Without the controls, even you yourself, you may not be comfortable with just going for any information, because it affects the integrity of the information and whether or not you can reliably use that information for the purpose. So controls, yes. What we are seeking to do is to make sure that people really understand how these controls can be implemented so that you are able to collect and use the information in the right framework. But I don't think in any space there would be, that information which is not aggregated in any form or anonymized, which you can be given access to. Ghana Statistical Service currently, they collect a lot of raw data, sometimes first party. But when you go to access the information, they will not give you the direct information, because even their laws recognize, that was passed as many years back, recognize the integrity that must be put into that process to ensure or assure those who are even giving out their information that this is only for statistical and research purposes and it will be used in that manner. There was a question on how ready we are as a nation to address the issue of data security. I will speak in terms of data protection and then what we are doing in this space. I believe maybe if there's someone from NITA here, they probably may throw more light, or the Ministry of Communications in terms of that. By way of data protection, of course, we require that adequate security measures are put in place when it comes to compliance. So we're going to, once we start compliance before the end of this year, what we're going to require is how you demonstrate. And usually you demonstrate to us adequate security safeguard through adequate training, through making sure that you have the necessary logical and physical safeguards in place. So if it's an IT system, based on your capacity and what you have and the kind of information you're collecting, one, have you really classified your information properly? Do you have access controls into your information? How do you know if there is an unauthorized access to that information and all of that? Another principle under the law which requires that if anybody rights has been infringed upon, they make a complaint, also gives us an opportunity to review any security implications, especially when there's a breach, because data controllers are then required to notify us of the breach, and then we work with them to ensure that they put in place measures that will prevent it from happening in the future. Right to be forgotten, as you rightly said, it was a court decision. Currently, as the data protection law stands, it says that you have the right to tell a data controller to stop using your information in any format if you are not comfortable. They also have the mandate to come back to you to tell you, I cannot do what you are requiring of me because of legitimate reasons. But that gives individuals the rights to come back to you if they are not comfortable to have their information deleted. And I'll link this to the issue on sex tapes and all of that, which we've created a lot of public awareness, education on. What is invariably happening, especially when it comes to students in this space, is that a lot of them do not, as a lot of us, or I think all of us, when we are interacting on those platforms, you know, I think we get excited about the fact that we have all these tools and technologies available to us that we can use for various purposes. But we don't see the implication of use of such platforms in the future. And so we're raising a lot of awareness, you know, to enable people know the implication. You may be here today, going on Facebook, taking a picture of you drinking, you know, alcohol and all of that. What you're doing is you're providing information to a possible employer in the future as to the kind of person you are. You're leaving a digital trail on your nature, on how you act, how you behave, for them to take decisions on you. It's happening even today. You know, courts are giving orders to use Facebook pages of people to determine where they were at a particular point in time. Criminals are, you know, the police and the security agencies are using information on these platforms to track criminals and to understand their behavioral patterns and activities and all of that. So we must be very responsible users of these platforms. Nothing in the law would stop you or discourage you from using it, but what we say is that if you're using it, just know that there could be negative implications, and you take steps to prevent that. How do we balance the issue of private personal information and aggregated data? I think I touched on it. So what we encourage is that usually the aggregated anonymized data, you are allowed to use that under data protection for research purposes. And so, as I mentioned, Ghana Statistical Service, for example, will anonymize the records and then make it available for other people who need it to do further analysis. We've also worked with Vodafone, I believe, when it came to the Ebola issues, on use of the call data records in terms of how to analyze trends of movement. How long do you keep employee data? The law does not specify a period. Usually the rule of thumb is that you keep data for as long as you need it. And that would depend on industry practice and other laws in the sector and how it applies to your agency. Yes, I think that's it.
Okay. Okay. The what?
Okay, freedom of information. Which one? Oh, yes, open data and freedom of information. The controls, I'm trying to control something. Oh, okay, so you were looking at how to ensure availability. So typically what you would do when it comes to freedom of information, the information must be there anyway to make it available. And it's not every kind of information that will normally be made available under freedom of information laws. So you would look at areas where, I give an example, let's say you are the president of the country. There's some data about you, about your income sources that can be made available on freedom of information, but it would not go as to the exact amount, or it will give a range. It will not give where exactly maybe your properties are located. It will not give where your children are or which school they are in. So you can still give information, but within the parameters of also protecting the integrity of that particular individual, especially in the space where they are like a public body or a public person entity.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the elaborate response. As you know, time is fast. We are going to give the floor to two personalities to make a very brief submission, Mr. Kofi Kapito and Mr. Pepra. So let me invite Mr. Kofi Kapito, if you could make your submission.
This is we're talking about big data. I'm looking at unsolicited bombardment of data from people that you have no business with. And the other one is I've noticed that even when you unsubscribe, sometimes it comes back. Is it a time limit as to when I can go back on the unsubscription again? But I thought once you do that, don't send me it again. It should end. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Pepra.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to the NCA and MOC for this beautiful symposium. Big data, big impact, very exciting future ahead of us. Soon, 2019 will be here. The mobile licenses will have to be renewed. There's a lot that we have learned from the 15 years. And as I speak now, there are large tracts of this country that are not covered. The infrastructure is still very weak. So I would like the regulator to take this opportunity to make sure that either new suppliers come in to really make sure that we are digitally connected properly, or the operators are enabled. Some of the constraints that were placed on them back then should be removed so they can really saturate the country with the right infrastructure for everybody to benefit from the revolution ahead. Second, and also the rules, the policies that we have worked with up till now. It's been more than 20 years. And the regulations. There has to be some comprehensive review of all these to make sure that we are launched properly, or we are properly aligned for the benefits of big data, so we can realize the impact of it going forward as a nation. Thank you very much.
All right, let me thank you all for your various contributions. We know big data is here with us. Big data has come. The question people ask is, what happens if big data connects with the Internet of Things? What if the physical world connects with the virtual world? What we are witnessing today is only a tip of the iceberg. We need to be ready, because we have reached a stage in the history of our development where we cannot afford to be left behind. We need to move forward. Technology has come to stay. It has come to revolutionize the way we do things, and as a country, we need to be part of this global information technology revolution. On this note, let me thank you all for your participation. Let me thank my panel and all the contributors. And on this note, I will invite the MC to take over. I think our job is done. Thank
you very much. I think they deserve better than this. Let them be appreciated so much. We thank you for very good work done. Thank you so very much. We are running against time now. So on this occasion, I would invite the board chairman of NCA to give his closing remarks. Please welcome him.
Thank you. I think it's been an excellent morning and early afternoon. We've had some excellent presentations from our panelists and from earlier speakers, and I'll pick on a few remarks. As to focus our minds on the global consensus on ICT for development. I agree, because we need to utilize the volumes of data that we're generating and gathering for national development. And that's the use to which the purpose, the more meaningful purpose for which all that data can be utilized. Apart from using big data to address national issues, the private sector also has the opportunity to use big data to provide services and grow businesses and generate revenues. We share in the UN resident representative's remarks that data has the power to transform communities. And then in the presentation by Mr. Bawadia, the acting government statistician, he touched on the processes he touched on processes related to big data, and he notes that a data revolution is key towards achieving the sustainable development goals. And to do this, we should all aim at addressing 3 challenges: data on new thematic areas, data disaggregation, and timeliness of data. We hold a lot of data, and we may share this data that we collect. However, we also need to protect the users who generate them, or consumers that generate this data. And this is what will give comfort to people about their privacy. This was the key concern in the presentation made by Mrs. Falconer, who raised a number of issues, that we're generating data, huge volumes of data on a daily basis. We're generating data which is being collected on finance, health, complaint, security, and a whole range. But we need to protect our data and also ensure that entities that collect our data use it responsibly and within the confines of the law. It's been an engaging discussion this morning. I want to just pick on a couple of points that came from the audience as well. There was a suggestion from a gentleman whose name I cannot recall, that we need to digitize the paper records to enable ease of access to this data and be able to use it for critical decision making. I think there was also a comment about training. So I want to plug the Kofi Annan Center for IT Excellence. They have excellent facilities for training, and I'll encourage those of you here and other organizations that need such services to utilize the Kofi Annan Center for that purpose. Big data is necessary for the SDGs. Something that struck me was about the figures on births and deaths, that in West and Central Africa, only 45% of births are registered. That is serious. And it's serious because, well, if you cannot because this has implications for our ability to plan for the future. If we don't know how many we are, if we only know about 45% of the population, and whether they are boys or girls, where they were born, where they're living, and so on and so forth. If we don't have that data, how do we plan? How do we know how many hospitals we need, where they should be located? How do we plan for social and economic services, water, schools, and so on? Other infrastructure, electricity, planning, and building an economy that will support and provide jobs for these children that are born but have gone unrecorded. It's really serious. And this is the entire West and Central Africa. You cannot manage what you cannot count or measure. This is really critical. I did a program a week or so ago about maths. And one of the question that the mathematician, Professor Kofi Anku, raised was one of the questions we have fundamentally to answer is how many? How many? If we don't know how many, we cannot solve many of the problems that we face. So this is an issue that really needs addressing. But mobile technology can help address that question, can help address the problems that births and deaths registry face. And I want to congratulate, take the opportunity to congratulate Tigo and others that are collaborating with the relevant institutions that lack the facilities in supporting them to address this question. I hope that it will be scaled up so that we can count how many we really are. I want to say a big thank you to our excellent panel, to Professor Osei Darkwa, Mrs. Akwete Falconer, Mr. Banwadie, and Mr. Felix Asante for your wonderful insights that you've shared with us this morning. So I'll conclude by saying big data is in fact the new oil, but it has to be mined. The data in and of itself doesn't mean anything unless it's mined, and mined responsibly as permitted by law. Exactly, not galamsey. So it's got to be mined, don't mine in the water. So it's got to be mined responsibly, mined in accordance with law. Mrs. Akwete Falconer will be watching her organization, the Commission, to support business decisions, inform policies in order ultimately to make lives better for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Lunch is now served, but before we disperse for lunch, I would like to, on behalf of the Minister, the Board Chairman, the management and staff of NCA, thank you so very much for participating in today's program. As usual, a report will be compiled and will be circulated to the participating agencies. We thank you. Please, you were given coupons when at registration, so please, you will present the coupon and you'll be served with lunch just outside. We thank you so very much. Thank you.
Excited about this. And what is Digital Ghana? Well, even before I started, it is important to know that Ghana is complying with an order from the ITU that the whole world should switch to digital television. Ghana is simply complying with the rest of the world in this migration. Now, what does this mean? It means a change in broadcast technology. We're moving from the old-fashioned and outdated analog system to the more dynamic and efficient